This is the October meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Service District Board of Directors. And could we take the roll, please?
Here. 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 Here.
Here. I wanted to just make one comment. It has to do actually with the TASER training that was undertaken last week. This is a train the trainer exercise that they had. So I took the liberty to come up and actually use the trainer in a virtual situation. It was an interesting exercise, very instructive as well. But what I did find is the training by the trainer himself was excellent. And what I found very good about it was the trainer took 3 officers, 2 sergeants and one of the officers, through 3 different scenarios. And what I found important was he emphasized that you don't make rash judgments when you're using these devices, and that you have to assess the situation, and only under the extreme condition where you really need to use it, that you do use it. And so I thought more than anything else that particular part of the training should be very useful. And the 3 officers will be then training the rest of the force on their use. So again, I want to thank the officers and the trainer for doing such a great job. With that, I'll turn it over to public comment. So is there anyone on the any of the attendees who want to comment on an item that's not on the agenda? I don't see any hands. So with that, let's move on. We have the consent calendar.
Mr. President, I need to interject that you did not see the September financials. We just couldn't get them done in time, so we'll be putting them in next month's board packet.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any issues with meeting minutes, corrections?
Getting a text from Vita Doro saying that the link did not work. They tried both links, but I see we have 5 participants who are on.
Right. Well, she can get back on, and she does have a comment after we've gone through the consent and the and
I'll tell her that.
yeah, I mean,
The link is on the agenda
right,
and 5 other people are, now there's 6 other people on there.
right. Yeah. Oh. You don't, not now, but when you're talking. Thanks, Cass. Okay, back to the consent calendar. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, meeting minutes? The only comment I have is Mr. Christie's name. Just maintaining consistency in how we spell it. But that's some minor issue. So do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Greg Christie.
Anyone want to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? Okay. And moving on to the, well, we don't have the bills for the September meeting for this. I'm sorry. We don't have it. We don't have the, oh, we do have the, I'm sorry. So we have the transmittal deposits for September.
Yeah. So
the Yeah.
consent calendar that you just approved is acknowledging the transmittals of bills.
Well-
Deposits and.
Okay, I separated them, but if anyone has any issue with that we approve both of them. They don't? Okay, that's fine. So does anyone have any comment on the transmittal deposits for the September 2024 bills paid? Yes? No? Okay. Motion to approve it?
I move to approve the schedule of deposits from September 2024.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I will go back to public comment. If anyone has a public comment, since Paul and Dia were having a problem getting in. Does anyone have a public comment on an issue not on the agenda? And I don't see any hands raised. Okay. Well, let's move on. Police Chief's monthly report. Lieutenant Knapp is going to present it for Chief Gancast. Welcome, Lieutenant.
All right. Good evening, Board of Directors, General Manager Aranda, members of the public here, as well as those joining us online. The Chief's monthly report is in, and I submitted for your review, and I'd be happy to take any questions you all may have.
Anyone have any questions? Sylvia?
There was a reference to a new program that sounded like an e-ticket or
Citation.
citation. Thank you. I was looking for the C word. E-citation program. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, the e-citation program was fortunately given to us on a grant that we authored last year for a little over $40,000. It is Contra Costa County's attempt to move towards a completely electronic version of authoring citations and fulfilling them to the courts. So the officers, with the grant, we purchased iPads, we purchased the software to produce the tickets to provide to offenders in the field. We also have the ability of transporting that once the courts complete their end of it, transmitting those over to the courts. So it kind of makes it a one-stop shop with the officers scratching a citation via an iPad and printing a citation from a printer in the vehicle, which all of the stuff was bought through the grant. So fortunately, the district, I think, only had to come out of pocket under like $100.
Thank you.
Yes?
I want to say I love it that you noticed increased criminal activity at certain times. So you increased patrols at those times. That's great. Couple of questions. With the increased hours of darkness in winter, does crime in Kensington generally increase as well?
I would have to go back and take a look at the stats. And that would be like the course over the last 2 years we probably want to look at. You don't generally see that, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Every year brings, new types of criminal activity, whether there's a increase in catalytic converters or, thefts from porches. So it would depend on what's going on.
Yeah, and maybe you can, ask the chief to give us that info next time. And how often do we call in the Contra Costa County Mental Health Crisis Team? Does that happen regularly? Have you seen it happen?
We haven't had to call them in recently, that I can recall from calls for service. It doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. I think in the last year, we probably asked them to step in at least once or twice. And that was a recommendation from us, from what we saw, the details. But generally they'll come at our request when needed.
Well, I just want to say, in my experience as a therapist, I've seen what happens when they're not called in on a, mental health crisis and people are shot. And I would really like a lot of training of officers to encourage use of that so that, no one with schizophrenia or autism ever gets shot in Kensington. So I looked at the GPS map and I noticed that up in the southeast corner of Kensington, there are a few streets that they pretty much are not going all the way to the end of, like Lake Drive, and Kenyon and Garden Drive and the end of Purdue. I mean, they go there sometimes. And I'd like to encourage increased patrolling there, partly just so that officers familiarize themselves with that area, because it's not only closest to the high fire danger, where help may be needed, near Tilden Park, it's also in a wealthy area near the home invasion that happened about 6 months ago. So just maybe asking them to go to the ends of the streets. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Cass. Sarah?
Yeah, thanks to all of you for all your work the last month and for the report. Why do you think there's been a 40% decrease in crime since August? That's pretty significant. Is that, again, a seasonal thing? Is that?
Again, it could probably vary on a bunch of different factors, right? We're seeing, like, for example, we're seeing a lot of sideshows that are happening on the west end of Contra Costa County, right? Those tend to bring in a lot more criminal activity, unfortunately, sometimes, but we don't receive that here in Kensington. We don't have anywhere for them to do any of that business, thankfully. It can vary on a bunch of different reasons. Talking with our neighbors, they've kind of seen a decrease in their criminal activity or response to calls. That's why you'll see there was a lower drop in response to calls or officer initiated activity when it relates to extra patrols in certain areas. We gauge that on what the previous month, what happened, how can we affect that specific area and provide more patrol to deter criminal activity. There could be a multitude. Maybe some of the bad guys found out that we're out in the areas that they're looking to go do crime in.
Thanks. And then just one other question, just because I know people are very concerned about response times. I just noticed it's inching up a bit, kind of I think if it was at its low, it was like 4 something minutes, which is crazy good. And 6.6 is still good, really good, but it's, like a 50% jump or whatever from the best. So I'm just wondering, again, it's still a great response time, but any thoughts on that?
No, I can look into what the trend has been. I know it's gone up a little bit over the last couple months. I can look into it a little bit further and get
But again, I do
all
want to
an answer.
emphasize it's still good, especially, vastly better than our
No,
neighbors.
sir.
So,
It's a great question.
but want to spot that trend. Thank you.
No. Let me ask about how you determine response time. Is it, let's say if an officer is in the community patrolling and they get a call, is that what is determined as response time from the time they get the call to the time they get to the event, if you want to call it that?
Yes, from the time of the dispatch for call for service to the time that they arrive on scene. There's a couple factors you have to remember in that, right? I'm the caller. I have an incident happening. I'm going to call. I'm going to reach dispatch. It's going to go through that process. Sometimes, unfortunately, they get bounced to highway patrol via a cellular phone call because it's not pinging off of the geolocation that we typically have from our home phones. So that breaks off a little bit of time, but the call has to go through a couple different factors before it gets to the officer. Once the officer receives it, they're going to get dispatched via MDC. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't get all the information in the detail. We just have a location. So officers are responding, but they kind of mitigate their response because we don't know whether or not there's active criminal activity happening. Albany Dispatch does a great job of getting us the location, but their dispatchers are working through what's the call, what's the problem, who's calling it in, are there multiple offenders, all these other things that takes time to kick into the detail. And we educate our officers to get to the call, but once you get to the outer area, slow it down a little bit, get all the rest of the information so we can figure out exactly how to respond. That would go right back to like a mental health call or something like that, right? We'd want to have all that information up front before we make a rash decision and get all the way in. Sometimes they'll stage outside the area and they're not necessarily on scene just yet. So they're not going to put themselves on scene, right? They'll stage in the area, wait for cover or medical to stage, and then put themselves 97 when they're going to the call for service.
So am I understanding that response time begins when the dispatch receives the call? Is that what you're saying? When does response time actually start as far as, this 6 minutes is concerned?
From the moment that it's dispatched to the officers is
Moment is-
what the true dispatch time call for service is.
Okay. And sometimes they could be somewhere in the,
Yeah, they could be breaking from an incident, right? They could be dealing with something else.
right.
You know, there could be, again, several different reasons why it might take them a little while longer to get there.
See, I think there's a misconception that response time has to do with the time it takes to go from El Cerrito to here. When they get them, when they're dispatched. And from what you're saying, that is not the case.
No, our officers are all, that was a mandate given down a couple years ago when we moved down to 10-940. The chief put out a mandate that said 80% of your time is in the district. So we enforce that. And having the supervisors here, they're in the district. But again, they could be on a call for service and dealing with something. It would be hard pressed for some of them to just break away from the call right away. And it depends also on the totality of the call for service. It might be a 6-minute call for service response time, but that might be them going from, say, them taking a theft report and they're trying to finish up the report to they're going to go take a miscellaneous, crime report that happened 3 weeks ago, right? So
Okay.
Because to your point, typically it's the patrol officers who are responding, right? So they're in the district patrolling anyway, they'd be the first to respond. It's
exactly.
From El Cerrito.
Right. Well, I think there is a misconception, at least my understanding of it, from what I think people think, is that the response time is from El Cerrito to here. And that's not the case. And I think it's important that people recognize that. So anyways, any other comments, questions? I would like to thank you for your continuing effort to reach out to the community and having these events, whether it's coffee down at the Arlington. Yes, thank you, because I can't pronounce it. Or the park event that you had either last week or the week before. I think it's a good thing to continue doing. It's a good community service and you're engaging with the community. So thank
We
you again.
appreciate that. We have a lot of fun at those events,
Yeah.
especially this last one with all the kids.
Yeah, the kids seem to be enjoying all that water and other goodies. Okay, well, thanks again.
I'd like to highlight a couple things real quick.
Well-
So we just received the taser training for our instructors. That was the one that President Spath attended. They will be training around this Wednesday coming up on the 16th to give training to all the rest of our patrol staff.
Mhm.
So Wednesday, the 16th, they'll receive training. They will have those tools on their belt and issued out into the field Thursday morning once they completed. So we're super excited about that. We're thankful to the board and the community support behind that. It's extremely important and useful for us. Saturday, October 20th, our personnel will be at the Kensington Fall Picnic. We look forward to seeing everyone there. And upcoming on Saturday, October 26th, a couple of weeks from now, we're happy to have everybody out for the 26th National Drug Take Back Day. That'll be held over at the Unitarian Church. And that's going to be held from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. To take any unwanted or unused medicines prescribed, as well as there'll be a shred event with fire that we're going to be doing. So if you have any old prescribed drugs and or documents that you need shredded, perfect place to come do that. And then October 27th, we will also be out at the Halloween harvest celebration that'll be happening during the farmer's market from 9 to 1.
Great. Anyone in the audience have a question, Lieutenant? Anyone online? A question? Seeing no one raising their hand, well, thank you again.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Moving on, the general manager report, David?
Thank you. A few comments. As the chief noted, I'm sorry, the LT noted, October 20th, the KCC picnic, in addition to the police being invited and roaming the area and interacting with our residents, we've also been kindly given a booth where we will exercise part of the grant on the biosolids, and that will revolve around, we think we're going to be able to give away some magnetic magnets, refrigerator magnets that emphasize where you put your trash, different types. And we're going to have that mill product available, and we're gonna do a giveaway on that one, on one of them. And also provide some discounts on I think it's the first 10 we decided upon. It all falls within the budget we have for the grant. So that'll be going on the 20th. On the 19th, I think most of us know that the KPOA has their meeting. And I will be doing a brief presentation by Zoom. And as noted, in the agenda, you have your chiefs and you have your general manager from the fire district, you have your supervisor. So that'll be interesting to listen. A couple of updates that appeared in my manager's report. I made mention that the board president and I, but primarily the board president, worked on a grant application. We received a request to be on a Zoom call with them this afternoon. Essentially, they told us that the type of grant we're applying for, which was specific on attempting to improve the infrastructure of the rec building and the annex building to meet geotechnical issues. We called this one BRIC brick. And they started asking us questions, and they said, they used the word, it's a highly competitive grant and you probably aren't going to qualify. But what they are doing is, with that concept, they're checking into another program. What was that one called?
Hazard mitigation grant program.
Yeah, hazard mitigation grant program. So we're waiting to hear back on that, and we may be able to transfer the information we gave them on the one to the other.
Let me just add to that too, is that would also allow us to expand the project itself. As David said, we would be looking, we were looking at seismic upgrades, retrofit for both buildings. With this new grant program, we could also incorporate hardening activities for wildfire prevention. So it may be a better grant to go after, certainly, and we may be more competitive as well.
Is this state or federal money that we're talking about?
It works through the federal government, FEMA, to the Office of Emergency Service in the state, and then to your different entities that qualify for them.
Yeah, and I would note that this so-called BRIC program, which is, I never remember the, I know the acronym, but can't remember the rest of it. That's competitive nationwide. And so we would essentially be competing against everyone else in the country. With this other hazard mitigation grant program, it is only California centric.
Yeah.
So we would only be competing against grant applicants in California. So that's why they suggested that we go in that direction.
Have we looked at any infrastructure funding? You know, the Biden's huge infrastructure bill that was passed?
We asked them again about infrastructure funding under the whole umbrella of FEMA and Cal OES. And then we keep getting the same answer, that that's not something they look at from the standpoint of a new infrastructure, a new building. And I continue to look at the CSDA listing of national as well as state openings for infrastructure.
Oh, okay. I guess I'd love to volunteer to help you research this, because I'm doing some of that kind of fundraising in another context.
We'll take all the help we can
If you
get.
come across anything,
Yeah.
that's fine, because right now, the other thing with our project is it's a drop in the bucket as far as cost is concerned. And they being FEMA, seem to like to fund large, expensive projects. And expensive is my term, but still, the only seismic project that they gave as an example that they were funded was something like a $30 to $40 million project. So, yeah.
I also wanted to mention, I had a phone discussion with, the supervisor. It appears right now that in the January agenda, there may be a full-blown presentation on the Kensington paths.
Mhm.
And so the supervisor wanted to make sure we could essentially on some issues be on the same page. And we'll see how that keeps moving between the supervisor of the county, the path keepers, and as we get involved, down the road. Uh, Director Dugan is, heavily involved with the discussion as well. And then I wanted to highlight a couple of things on your attachments. If you noticed the cleanup for 2024, it's kind of scary. How close the garbage tonnage was from 2024 to 2023. And I talked to Greg, and I mean, I guess we're a consistent community when it comes to trash. But I would call that 2024 not only very successful, but as Mr. Christie stated, a lot smoother in the community understanding what responsibilities they had, how to contact Bayview. So it went very smoothly. In your report and in the board packet is an OPEB plan. I think it's very important to understand that when initially, every year they do the actuarial report because it's required as part of the audit. But it bothered me last year when it was done. And is there something wrong with the? So I still not working.
No, yours, working.
Seems to be charged.
Sorry? Sure.
Yeah.
sure.
You want to swap?
I can move to the end.
You don't need to take the mic.
Oh, yeah, one night. Aimlessly.
Yeah, I'm getting a little lightning bolt, so I guess that means it's all good.
Yes, now it's charging. Yeah, those are not working.
So in the regard to this OPEB plan, that's very important for the district to see how we are funded on the retired medical side. And since I've been here, I've had a few residents question what that liability might be and how it would impact our operations, especially when it comes to reorganization. The comment I'll make is what we found when I went back to the company that has been doing it. Number one, they were using an old MOU. Number two, they were using names of some people that were deceased. They had some people incorrect, whether they were in Classic or whether they were in the current Pepra. So we now feel that we have a very accurate plan. Keep in mind that this plan is for 2023. So all the new officers we hired don't appear in this. When they get incorporated in the following year, I believe that that might even lower our liability more. I gave the board members a cover letter of a brief comment from the person that did the actuarial study. We will post that letter or that email along with the actual OPEB plan on the website for people to review. And if they have questions, they can contact me. The other item that was part of the board packet was the Allen Crop geotechnical report. That also will be produced on the web. Well, I guess it actually is, right? So it'll stay on the website for people to look at. We have had a couple of comments from our residents stating that they appreciated it and they thought it was a very thorough report. And I think those were the items I wanted to cover.
So yeah, as regards the community cleanups, you know, by Bayview Refuse, our waste handler, I just want to say, what other community has people who come in and get large items out of your house and bring them to the curb and dump them? And also will come and pick up your hazardous items that day, you know, at a scheduled time. I just think it's great. I'd like to ask for Rosa Ruiz on the Parks report to call it Indigenous Peoples' Day instead of Columbus
Yes,
Day.
we apologize
Yeah.
and we will get that corrected.
Yeah, and
We already have corrected it.
thank you. Yeah, I noticed that it was that on the rec report. And lastly, what is the distribution plan for the mill grinders? I think it's it's a great community project. How many are we going to distribute at what reduction in price?
I apologize, I didn't bring all the details on that file with me, but off the top of my head, we're gonna give one away. I think we're gonna offer 10 at the picnic at $100, which is extremely discounted. And then from there, we will take anyone that wants to get on the list, but we're gonna take a break from essentially the residents and we're gonna search out our commercial people that produce more bio waste and see if they have an interest. And I believe the total number of units that are part of the grant is in 20 or 25, somewhere in that number.
I have 3 comments, questions, whatever they will be, statements. One, I just want to put a reminder out that to try to get ahead of the changing darkness and the time change so that we're ready to change the lighting in the park.
Yeah, but the problem is lighting. And I've been talking to Fernando about it now, and he's having trouble getting an electrician to even respond to it. I just sent him another email to Fernando asking if he's been able to locate someone. The last conversation we had, he thought he had located someone and he was gonna initially do the repairs so that there is.
So there's no light right now. There's a problem. I didn't know that.
Well, I wouldn't say there's no light. It's diminished, I guess is the
Okay.
word I'm gonna use. But my goal is, because I noticed this when I first started coming to work in February of 23, you can't see your feet as you're walking out the door here. And it's dangerous and we've got to do something about it. And it's coming to another winter and it
Okay.
hasn't happened and I'm disappointed.
If I can be helpful, we have try Ally Electrician. There are electricians. Say I sent them. I sent you.
Give me someone.
I will. I'll try. Okay. Secondly, and also, so yeah, thanks for making the repairs and we'll just keep an eye on the timing and changing the automatic switches and everything. 2, we may want to consider an earmark strategy for some funding for the buildings. You know, if this is a pretty small ask, you know, we go to, I think it's DeSaulnier now or Garamendi. I always forget, maybe it's Garamendi now. Go to Garamendi's office with a request, put it in and see what happens. I mean, you know, it's always a possibility. It's a very small request.
And that's been suggested by basically California Special Districts has suggested that, and their national special districts is now.
Yeah. You have to kind of identify where you want the earmark to come from, often, and maybe they can help us do that. And then lastly, on the recycling issue, and I know Greg is listening, I just think it's really important to get, to be ready to respond to the last couple of weeks of stories about both California and nationally, that recycling is really a failed program, that it's a failed marketing tool of the plastics industry. It's not the first time I've heard that. And I do think that regardless of the merits of that, we do have a program in place, and we just want to make sure it's clear to people, what they need to recycle and how to do it best, because it's a lot of confusion out there. I've talked to Greg and Kim already about maybe in the next mailing to really blow up the issue around plastics and what goes in and what can't go in. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Director Hassai. Could that be incorporated into this grant somehow, like a improved education understanding around recycling specifically, given all of these stories? Because yeah, now I'm thoroughly confused.
Yes, I believe it can. And my suggestion would be if you have thought process to that, send me an email. We all get together, the company monitoring the grant as well as the Christies and I, we get together, I don't know, every few weeks to keep on staying on top of the grant and the grant process and the billing and all that. And so we did budget some money for education. So what we would do is run that's whatever your suggestion would be, and feel free to be as detailed as you want. We would run that by the grant coordinator.
Anyone else? I just want to make one comment. I wanted to recognize past boards on this OPED issue because, and Sylvia was on the board at the time of contributing to the OPED over time, which is the reason why we have such a significant amount in the OPED. So yeah, kudos to past boards on that. Any questions from the audience? Any questions from attendees online? And Greg wants to ask a question or talk.
No, if, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I heard you all loud and clear on the information about the recycling, but yeah, there's some stuff going on right now. But actually we're taking our stuff too. They had opened up a big plastics processing facility. It gets shipped a little bit, but they're finding markets for certain things. So I think maybe the next focused on the newsletter that's coming up will explain a little bit more in detail on what's going on, and then exactly what's happening with the Kensington recycling and where it goes. That would be good.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay. The next item has to do with a community survey. Oh, did I skip that? I'm sorry. All right, director comments then. Yes, Cass.
I will try to make this quick. I just want to mention that I have asked for a tour of the renovated former public safety building. If any other directors want to tour the building, Mary is supposed to set that up. And a number of citizens have asked for a discussion of the possibly, ideas of putting a substation in the first floor of the PSB. So I would like to ask that that be agendized. And furthermore, okay, my recent activities. Yes, I've been working with the Path Keepers and Supervisor John Joy and David Aranda on possible plans to offer to the KPPCSD board in January 2025. We've been discussing options, including an experiment wherein the county accepts ownership of 3 of Kensington's 14 paths, and the county surveys them and makes some minor improvements that are needed, then offers them to our district free of charge. Our current insurance would cover them with a minimal or zero increase. So in January, this will come up for discussion, and John Joy is going to be making some sort of comments at the KPOA meeting, and I'm thrilled. I love the Kensington paths, and I feel that ownership of the paths is a great goal to work towards. And trying an experiment where we bite off a small number first and see what happens.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think Greg
Yeah.
Christie's mic may still be on.
Okay, and so onward, I've been talking with various citizens about creating a nonprofit for Kensington to accept donations from citizens. Because I feel there's a lot of money in this community that people might like to donate towards, parks or paths or maybe a building for the police. Many people have suggested that the Kensington Community Council, which did a lot of fundraising in the past, could help with this. If anyone, any citizen wants to help with this kind of fundraising or try to form some sort of little group or movement, please talk to me because I don't have time to do all this. And I believe that is all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
Can I ask a clarifying question on Cass's point about the forming the nonprofit or no? Just, I thought we could receive donations.
We can.
Okay.
Everyone I talk to says, although the KPPCSD can receive donations, people want to earmark things and people don't want to give money to an organization that taxes them already. They want to very specifically give it to someone else.
This, I think, should be agendized as a discussion because I think there's more to discuss here. And I think it's not appropriate without an agenda item.
That's fine. I mean,
Sounds great.
we want to agendize it for the next meeting. If there's interest in furthering the discussion on that.
Would it be possible to get our legal counsel to just to review this question? I think they're the best suited to answer this question, not us. Thanks.
Okay, I guess we can do that. All right. Or we can agendize it and have them speak to it at that time. Either way. Any other comments? Okay, so now move to the issue of the survey. And let me just preface that by saying that Sarah and I created this ad hoc committee, and we've, as you can see here, taken a shot at outlining what we think would be a useful first survey, going out to the community, recognizing that that was one of the issues that we identified in the strategic planning exercise. And so this is first effort to suggest some questions, talk about different vehicles for reaching out to the community so that they know there's a survey out there and how they would access it. So that, you want to start? Now let Sarah take it after.
Well, I think the organized way to discuss this is taking each of the numbers, so, and getting either board consensus or changing. So we've broken this down. Number one is objectives. And again, I don't know if Sarah or the board president would like to speak on that. I mean, it's in writing there, but there might be helpful on some background.
Sarah, and I'll let you do it because you were more the initiator of this than I.
Thank you. So I think as everybody recalls, you know, we've talked about surveys. We've mentioned the surveys a lot for a lot of different reasons and purposes. I think the feeling was when the survey company came back and the price was quite high to do a very extensive survey. We weren't really prepared to do that, spend that kind of money on when we didn't have, you know, enough details on some of these big issues that everybody's wondering about, taxing ourselves or what have you. And so that said, I think we recognize, and I guess I shouldn't speak for other directors, but I know I certainly recognize that we don't get a lot of input from the broader community, that we hear from a few people regularly and really don't have any kind of sense of what everyone else is thinking lately. And that we should have a regular check-in annually, in my opinion, where we just get a temperature check, very basic, very simple, very easy lift for us to do quickly and, you know, not uber scientific or in-depth for this purpose. And so then to keep it as a very low cost, low time intensive sort of endeavor that can be done annually was the way I was certainly thinking about it. I think President Spath agreed, and that's the lens through which I hope you look at this sort of plan and the questions, which are super basic. But the other objective, aside from getting this temperature check, that in my mind is equally useful, is this hope of gaining more email addresses of the community. That will enable so many things. You know, namely just, you know, our ability to be in direct communication on very critical issues. We have no social media presence. We only have 80 people on our distribution list receiving notifications about the meetings and packets and whatnot. And I'm not suggesting we then start spamming the community, but we do need a way to reach out directly on certain key things that we know are kind of on the horizon in relation to the building or whatever big initiatives this board or future boards endeavor to undertake. So this is a way to grab those emails with permission and in collaboration with some of these other K groups. So those are really the two objectives. And then down the road, it doesn't preclude doing a more in-depth survey on one of these other bigger issues and paying a professional firm who would do a much better in-depth job.
I want to say thank you. I like this direction a lot. I love it that you're talking about doing it yearly, really keeping in touch with people. Getting more emails sounds really smart. Hopefully we will get more emails once, you know, if our two boards manage to consolidate, we'll get the emails that the fire board is speaking to. And I like it that this is a homegrown effort rather than contracting out to a survey company who won't know Kensington, won't know the issues, and will take a lot of money to bring them up to speed. So, yeah, I liked your administration and distribution. I don't know if we want to take this piece by piece, so maybe I'll stop there.
So I'll move on if it's all right. Administration and distribution, I think A and B, I mean, unless someone has some issues with those two comments, two thoughts of direction from the ad hoc committee. It's C that we really need some help on. We talked about a number of different ways to distribute notification of the survey. And obviously there's costs involved. So we thought it would be helpful to get input from the entire board on each of your thoughts on how aggressive we want to be and how much money we want to spend.
So I'll just sort of recap. There were a few channels we thought would be easy and make sense. We can send the survey out via email to the emails that we have as the district and look to partner with these other K groups who have their own distribution lists, and they could send the survey link out to their membership. Assuming that they probably wouldn't want to hand over their emails, but just do it themselves. Hopefully we can partner with them to get even more. There could be a brief note in the Outlook, which is not a paid advertisement. That would be an Outlook article essentially about the survey, which could include the QR code to the survey and the website link, as well as maybe mention of picking up a hard copy at our office or the library if they feel more comfortable. Obviously, both those things are free. A flyer, that's just a handful. How many locations do we post currently our agenda in 3? So we would do the same with the QR code of the survey in those locations, easy. Then we know now that we've started, thanks to General Manager Randa, this quarterly newsletter with Bayview Refuse. So that would include mention of the survey with QR code and the link and explanation of what it is, flag it there since we're already doing something. So that's not really additional monies because we'd be doing that anyway. It's not survey specific. Separately, we could do also a survey specific postcard mailer, which was previously done by the old ad hoc committee on reorganization. That would be a couple $1,000s and could go later. And that would just be specific to our survey, just to grab attention. And I think that's where we have the biggest question, because that is probably going to be a couple $1,000s to do that, to print and distribute it. And the final one is just if people can pick up their hard copy of the survey and drop it at the library. So we would coordinate with the library. So that's also free. So the big one really is this postcard. Do you all feel that's worth it? A couple $1,000s for that, when we will be a couple weeks before sending something in the mail about the survey.
Yes.
Yes, I believe it's crucial because we don't want anyone, saying they did not hear of this or they got no notification and this will come to their address. So,
Well, so does the newsletter. That was the thing. They're both going in the mail.
well, okay.
Anyway,
It might be worth it just to, to double down and make sure they get it. And definitely in the Outlook, because a lot of people, as you said, tell them in the Outlook that they can get it at the library or pick it up at the office, because there are so many, 25% of our people here are seniors and they're not as, I'm sure there's, 500 people here who wouldn't know what to do with a QR code. And, probably 250 who are not online at all. Adults.
Alex?
I'm sorry if you mentioned this. And first of all, thank you so much. This is, I agree with Katz. This is long overdue and really well done. Did you discuss partnering with Hilltop or the PTA about distributing this, or other community organizations like the KPOA, if they have a listserv? Yeah.
so we didn't talk about the schools specifically. Okay,
I would suggest not, because quite a large number of parents actually, if you looked at the population at one time I asked, it was actually more Elstree than Kensington. And I think the school would be hesitant, honestly, to do that. So I wouldn't go with the school.
we were thinking KIC. I know that they have a distribution list of over, I think, 250 people at least. KPOA would have a separate one, the fire district, and KCC. And just obviously there'll be duplication in there, and we can sort that out with them if they want to partner with us.
Question for Director Hasai. Is there any way of reaching young parents in the community?
I mean, you can stand at the school and hand it out if they're a Kensington resident, but I think it's worth just mailing to every Kensington home, honestly. And a postcard really shouldn't be that expensive. And it could be a larger than it could be not just tiny, it could be a little bit bigger to make sure it doesn't get lost. And I think if you do mailing with the mail house, you can just request it, and it's mailed to every Kensington resident, and it just says Kensington resident. There's not a name, and so that's cheaper that way. So as far as young parents go, I mean, I think you just, do everything you can anywhere, whether, all the social media channels. And well, we do. I mean, we do have, the police do. Unfortunately, that's always been an issue. But all of us have our own presence. We can certainly, I mean, put out what we can. But the best thing to do is really just to send it to every home. And I think having it in the newsletter is great, but I think it should still be a separate mailing for the district. We don't do hardly any, and it really shouldn't break our budget. We shouldn't hesitate to spend this money for this purpose.
I would just note, we did do that with the ad hoc committee. We sent out a postcard to everyone. And we got about 500 participants in the questionnaire that we did at that time, on the survey we did at that time. And Cass, you're right that there are a number of residents who actually are not computer literate. And so they were very much interested in getting a hard copy. And some of them didn't have access to the computer. So we worked with the library to allow the use of the library computers to access the survey as well. So there are a number of vehicles, but the real issue, as Sarah's mentioned, is do we want to use both the newsletter and a postcard? It sounds like we want both.
Great, helpful information. Thank you all. We could also post the QR code and announcement of the survey, essentially the postcard on our homepage on the website. If people happen to go there, they have to get to our website, but okay, great. That's
So it sounds to me like the board's in agreement with going full board. Okay.
Yep.
And then you have the content that we came up with, and I'll let Sarah again expand upon that.
Yeah, again, super basic, just a satisfaction, customer satisfaction essentially on each of our main service areas, our governance, obviously, and police, parks, recreation, solid waste, and meant to be a scale. So it's going to be, one bubble for them to click for the questions 1 through 6. The whole thing should take fewer than 15 minutes. And then we did one open-ended question at the end, and limited it to about 150 words. We could consider making that 250 words. I don't know. But obviously that will have to be gone through by staff, and I'm guessing our ad hoc committee will review and find a way to interpret and communicate those findings on that question. And that's more open-ended, and technically people can say whatever they like there. And then a specific ask to provide us their email or give us permission to use the email that we have. Technically, when we send out SurveyMonkey, and just so you all know, we did look at a few online providers. This one did seem like the best for our purposes. We pay essentially an annual subscription at $500. That's the least expensive way to do it, or less than $500 a year. And we can send to our whole community free surveys. They cap the respondents, or they're more expensive survey companies that are far more in depth than we need for the types of questions we're asking here. So SurveyMonkey, we can, looked into that. This is our best bet. And I think a lot of people in the community are already familiar with how to do it. So yeah, any thoughts on?
Cass?
So this might actually kind of be backing up to more, I don't know, distribution or technicalities. How do we ensure individuals don't retake the survey? Do we ask for names, addresses, emails?
Yes, thanks for asking that. So I reached out directly to SurveyMonkey, and actually I think got human responses. They're very convincing AI. And when we send it out via emails, they can only, and people click on that link and respond, you can only complete the survey once. It's an email identifier, so that will happen automatically. And they also track via browsers. Now, technically, if you're doing it by QR code and not accessing the survey through your email directly, you could, in theory, access it multiple times from, different browsers on different devices and maybe create, multiple responses for the same survey by the same person. That would take a lot of effort. And I think on, something like this, I mean, someone would have to figure that out for one, which I'm now announcing to people how to do, all 11 of us here. But anyway, I think that that's not likely to happen. And I think that, again, because we're getting a general temperature check, there's not a lot of motivation to do something like that either, because, maybe a more controversial issue specific thing, someone might be ultra motivated to try to scam the system. But I think we're going to trust the good people of Kensington to just give us their feedback on these general topics.
Sylvia.
So no names.
No names, and there's an assurance of confidentiality because we won't know who says what. We will only retain email addresses if they provide in that question. So while technically they could be kept through an email distribution and response. So if you respond via the email link that we send you, technically we could hold those, but we won't. We don't have to. We can choose not to do that and just hold on to it when it's provided, if it's provided in the survey itself. And then the IP address of the various users gets deleted within SurveyMonkey after like 30 days. So there really is anonymity, and very unlikely again that there would be multiple respondents per survey. The default is that there aren't. It's just not allowed. It would be difficult to get around that multiple respondent.
Sylvia.
If we have comments on the content or the wording of the questions, do you want those sent to David? Do you want to hear what they are right now? How would you like to do that?
I think if it's a little tweak, maybe to David later. If it's substantive, I mean, we haven't actually gone in to try to put these questions, so we might not be allowed to do a 1 to 5 scale. It might be I'm very somewhat, not at all satisfied. It might be a scale more like that. So that's why I said this is more to the substance, not so much, the form.
I can make the comments now and then I can send them to, I don't think they're major, but so I think, so here are my comments. One, on the first question, when you say, how would you rate your understanding of your local government, including? I feel like we should just say, how would you rate your understanding of the roles, responsibilities, and finances of the KPPCSD? Because, that's what we really want to know. I wouldn't ask about their local government because that may just be confusing. Just a thought.
Oh, okay.
All right, just very minor stuff. I mean, that's not, the other thing I thought that might be worth knowing is when we ask the questions about the Kensington Police Department and the offerings of the park, there could be another question that just says, in the last 12 months, have you made a call, or interacted with the Kensington Police Department? And within the last 12 months, have you been to Kensington Park and Nielsen Park? Because, just important to understand, like, are people actually commenting and also using these services? If they comment about the police and they say horrible, but they've never called them, that's, I mean, I don't know if that's just an idea, just some thoughts. And then I think it's also worth saying offerings of Kensington Park and Nielsen Park, in parentheses, Kensington Park, Arlington Avenue, Nielsen Park, corner of Arlington and Coventry, because people down Lower Kensington honestly may not know at all. When I lived in Lower Kensington, even with very young children, I was gravitating to Thousand Oaks Park and Albany Memorial until I moved up here. For the first year I lived in Kensington, it was like, when I came up here, I was like, oh, wow, there's a village up here and all that. So you have to really think about that too. And that's really all. I just wanted to mention, you can take or leave the suggestions, but those were my thoughts.
Thank you. Yes?
So I, for one, would like to read every comment that is sent in, and I would like them to not be as limited. Let's give them 250 words, because you can't say too much in 150 words. That's my personal opinion. I'm sure you can make it available to every director. Maybe every director won't be so into it, but you can also group and, average the comments and present it in a report. And so I noticed when you introduced this, you said something about whether we should tax ourselves. And that is the one issue that I don't see reflected in the survey that I would like to see reflected in the survey, because we're not going to survey again for a whole nother year. And I'd really like to take the temperature of the community as to whether they want to see us raise taxes, let me see what I write. Would you be willing to pay higher taxes in order to fund a new large building to house the police in central Kensington? A question like that.
Could I
Good. Sue.
just, well, Cass, as for the next, or Director Duggan, as for the next survey, we don't actually know when that professional survey would occur, because I think it's very dependent on when we get information on the building and service. There's a lot more information that we don't have, which is why we're not doing and asking those questions now. And to open the can of worms about taxing or additional funding, we don't have the information, we don't have any context to put it in to ask those questions. So you're arbitrarily putting something out there and something like that without any context. It's not a helpful response you get back, because you don't even know from what perspective or relative to what, or there's no, for it to be helpful information, there needs to be context and information shared first with the community to then reflect and say, okay, because of course you ask anyone generally, do you want to tax? No, we all pay too, but if you say, here's the story, here's the information, now, would you be willing to tax yourself? And possibly this much or that much, or maybe not. Maybe that's not the question. Maybe that's not the survey. We don't know. Maybe there are too many maybes for it to be useful at this stage. My opinion. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in.
Asking it.
I'd like to respond. Well, the backstory here is that I am the one director who is saying, I don't believe the community is in favor of raising taxes. And I'm pretty sure that there are 4 other directors here who want to raise taxes and go
Nope,
ahead.
please don't put words in our mouths. Nope.
And I'm just saying, you may speak up now. That's, as soon as I'm done. I just feel it's sneaky to hide our plans to raise taxes from the public. I think we ought to be getting that out there with this survey and taking the temperature of the community, because believe me, people come in, I've recounted that I was at the National Night Out, and there was a gentleman who would not speak to me because he was so disgusted with our plan to build a new building instead of putting the police back into the PSB. So let's avoid the elephants in the room. Let's talk about those elephants, and let's put it on the survey. And those who don't want to put that on a survey, to me, are just trying to sneak up in a sneaky way and then try to convince the public to vote for that, whereas we need a dialogue. I really feel we need a town hall on this. That's my opinion.
Sarah.
You need to be on the mic better, Sarah.
Sorry, I would just say that one of the objectives of this survey is to do the opposite of what you just said. By getting more contact information, by more members of the community, we can be more transparent and more communicative and share more information and actually hear from a broad swath of the community as to how they feel. Do the opposite of hide the ball.
Except about this one issue that we're not going to
Yes,
discuss.
I'm speaking. This, this is a temperature check on resident satisfaction on the services we offer now to do regularly, to check in. It also is providing, and it is a real earnest attempt to be in better communication with the community in a very cost-effective, streamlined way. That's all it is. This is,
May I say something?
Yes. I guess.
We're not tied to doing a survey once a year, number one. Number two, I think what you're bringing up about the possibility of taxing the community, be it for a building, be it for additional park facilities, whatever, is warrants a separate. I don't even know if it's a survey, but it warrants a separate contact with our population. And if you ask people right now if they're willing to be taxed, but you don't know the dollar amount and you don't know what it's for, you're going to get more questions than answers.
That may be true. So let's open up a forum for the questions and the answers. Let's be transparent and let's not hide our agendas.
I resent this implication that anything we're doing here is hiding or sneaky. Every meeting is open to the public. Every discussion we've had so far about the possibilities of a new police building have been held in public prior to you all getting elected over many years. So this is not a secret. And I completely agree with General Manager Aranda and other board members who believe that at this moment, there is absolutely nothing of value to communicate to the community. We have taken step by step to suss out what is possible. We don't know everything that's possible. We have no idea of the form this potential site and building may take. So I am strongly opposed to doing anything until we have very concrete information. And that concrete information is going to take a long time to come to. It is going to be a process. And we have invited and continue to invite the community to be a part of that process. I came in after already a year or two of work on this community center renovation. Not a big project when you compare it to building a brand new building. And so that took a long time. This is going to take time. It will change. It will morph based on many things. And until we are ready to present a plan and, a dollar figure to the public, it is counterproductive, I think, to go out with generalities, abstract questions. I feel extremely strongly about it. And I continue to invite all members of the public and all the board to continue having the discussions we need to have discussed.
The other comments on it? I think, Michael, the consensus is that it's probably not a question that is ready for prime time. And I would actually, if you've had the chance to look at the proposal that survey company, hey, you look at what they use as examples for different jurisdictions. Many of them had to do with infrastructure projects, and they clearly were able to define exactly what the issue was and what it was going to cost the residents. And that's the type of survey down the road, I would think, would be more informative and allow residents to make an informed decision. Because right now, just putting a generic question about whether or not you'd be willing to increase your taxes, really, I don't think is very informative at all. I'll make one last comment. And I think the rest of the board are not interested in raising people's taxes. I mean, we don't have the authority to raise people's taxes to begin with. If residents of Kensington wants to tax themselves, they have the authority to do that. But I don't think it should be portrayed as the board is going to raise their taxes. So with that, the consent, Alex. No, that's right, I'm done.
I just want to second your comments. I take very seriously the taxation issue, and it's not something that this board has authority to do. And this would be an issue that would have to go to a vote if it ever got to that point. We don't know the number. We don't know what we would be taxing ourselves for. So I agree that it's too early to be asking that question, but I am all for asking that question when we have the information. And I also want to say that I'm deeply saddened by the tone of the comments of Director Duggan. It just seems inappropriate and there seems to be some kind of personal attacking here going on. I think all of us here on the board work incredibly hard. And I don't think there is among any of us, I don't think any of us are trying to be sneaky or be nefarious. And I would just counsel us to be very careful in the language that we choose to use in meetings with each other. I certainly would not use those kinds of words about Director Duggan's work, even though I don't always agree with your opinions. So that's just, I'm deeply saddened by some of the comments that have been made tonight. I do have a question or a recommendation for the survey content. I don't know if this is the place to do it or if we can do it in a future survey, but I would love more questions around cultural diversity and especially how do communities of color feel in this community? So I want to kind of ruminate on what that might look like, but I do, and whether we have enough diversity in our leadership, that's something I grapple with. My personal opinion is no. So I want to, I don't know I don't know if this is a place and maybe we can talk offline about it.
Well, my suggestion on that, if you could word one or two questions, I shouldn't limit the number. If you could give us a few examples of questions that you think we should ask, then the committee can go back and say, yeah, it makes sense to do it now, or maybe the next time around.
Sure, happy to do so. Again, this is a similar comment along with how do we reach parents, working parents is you can't just post it on a website and expect to reach those communities. So we would have to do some thinking about how to reach, Latino residents, how to reach, South Asian residents, Black residents. But so that's just again, I'm happy to work on this.
Yes.
I would like to see this board be a place of open discourse and debate about all the hot topics in Kensington, more than past boards, not just the ideas favored by the current board members. Let's stop the Kensington tradition of elephants in the room that board members refuse to talk about and will not agendize. Democracy.
What's this
democracy.
have to do with our survey questions?
We need to put every big topic on the survey, guys. How about a question about the home of the police? That is the biggest issue that has been central to Kensington for the past 2 years, been all over the newspapers. Why is it not on the survey? It could be a question, okay, do you favor building a new building and taxing residents, using the public safety building, using other structures in Kensington, or farming out the police to another local area, which more people than you think want to do? I mean, I just feel that the survey should have all of these questions. It's important.
So I'm a little confused, Director Duggan, because when we explained the initial objective, which was just to get a general temperature check on services, you seem to think that was a good objective and one that we could do annually and that would make sense. If we go to specifics on specific topics underneath each of those services, that isn't really a general temperature check that you were okay with. So are you okay with the initial objectives as described? Because I thought you were, because to go deeper on some of these other issues, it changes the nature of the survey, and it no longer is a simple basic temperature check on resident satisfaction and an endeavor to get more contact details to be in better communication with our citizens. Those are the two objectives, which I thought we were all in agreement on. So that's what we want to stay focused on as we discuss the content of these questions. Short and sweet, under 15 minutes, easy lift, do it every year. And then people do have an open-ended question. And if someone wants to vent on anything, they can do it there. And we'll read it and we'll get it and we'll share that information when we present the results of the survey. So in reality, they can say whatever they want in that 250 words or whatever we give them. And also they all have our contact information, can always tell us or appear at any meeting also. We're not silencing anyone. If it's not included in the survey is the point.
Well, in my opinion, it should be yearly, tailored to the current issues of government in Kensington. We might want to put on there, do you favor, what we've been doing as far as reorganization? I don't think it should just be a general temperature check. I think it should address local issues and, I think we'll be laughed at. I think there'll be people who are angry if we don't include a question about the use, where the home of the police. People would be like, why didn't you put that in the survey? That's my personal opinion from people I talk to.
Actually, I think, as Sarah has said, we may find that in this 150 or so many words, because when we did the ad hoc committee survey, you would be surprised what people added, because we had the same approach. We had an open-ended question that allowed people to vent, if you will, for lack of a better term, and they did. And that information was all made public. And to your point, Cass, that yes, all of the information in my mind would be made public individually. We wouldn't be summarizing it. We would make it available for everybody to see. So, one last time.
One quick suggestion, I'd like to ask each of you board directors to, in the next month, ask 10 Kensingtonian adults whether they think the issue of the public safety building and possibly increasing taxes should be on this upcoming survey.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience? Anyone online? Sylvia, we'll start out with you, and then Delk has a comment as well. Sylvia's phone. Not there. So it's Sylvia. Sylvia's phone, do you see that? Okay, so can be able to unmute? I think she has to unmute. Sylvia, can you unmute? Is she unmuted? Is she allowed to unmute?
I'm sorry, are you guys talking to me?
No, I think you have to.
No, Greg, we have a resident's hand being raised and we're having difficulty unmuting that resident.
Okay, all right.
What about Delk? Try her. You could try Delk and then come back.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm on?
Yes, you are. Go
Good.
ahead, Delk.
Could I mention,
Alright.
Sylvia, we were able to unmute Delk. I don't know if it's because of your phone, but we're not able to unmute you. So you might want to check your phone and then we can come back to you.
I thought I was unmuted.
Go ahead, Delk.
Start in, Delk.
Yeah. Okay. God, this is going to be totally trivial now after all this, but I want to point out in paragraph 2CIV, the fourth item, it states that one of the means of distribution of the notification and then subsequently probably the survey itself might be the district's quarterly newsletter with Bayview Refuge. Presumably that means in Bayview's next mailing. The first one would be in the next mailing. That will work for this January, but note that Bayview does not do quarterly mailings. They are triannually. That is 3 times a year every 4 months. Incidentally, this also means that last month's proposal to send out a district quarterly newsletter will not be in sync with Bayview's current schedule for mailings in January, May, and September. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, going back, try Sylvia's phone again.
Can't get it undone.
Well, Sylvia, doesn't seem to be working. Yeah. What about Katie Cluck? Also says talking permitted to her too. I don't. No, so,
I have a message from Sylvia. She's suggesting that we ask in the survey, how do residents want to communicate with us and vice versa? Outlook, Instagram, other channels, and then maybe they could check a box with different communication channels. And sorry, Sylvia, that we can't seem to get you unmuted.
I'm jotting that down. How do residents wish to communicate with us
I think it's
or?
the other way around. I think
Yeah,
how do
that's-
residents wish to receive messages from us or
No, she said communicate with us and vice versa.
and vice versa.
okay, Sarah.
So also just on this note, especially as we might be having some technical difficulties, if anyone would like to email either myself or President Spath or Director or General Manager Aranda with any proposed questions, I mean, please feel free to do that in the next couple of weeks as we finalize this list and they'll be reviewed, knowing the objectives of the surveys. When, please take that under consideration before you send your questions.
Katie, do you have a question or want to ask something? I know. Well, for some reason it says talking permitted, so I'm just asking if she's interested. If she isn't, then we'll take her off. Okay, that's fine. Anyone else? All right. Well, I think we've gotten some good feedback. And we'll work on it. And it looks like bring it back for finality in November, I think is the best approach as we also tie the loose ends with regard to dissemination.
Yes, and I think a timeline would be good, like when is it gonna be ready? You know, you have to think of a mailing timeline, an Outlook publication timeline, some of these channels may end up not completely working, so.
Right.
So maybe the ad hoc committee needs to get together quickly and come up with that.
Yeah, and the other thing, I'm trying to remember the outlook, there's a double January, February. So it would have to get into the November or December. Yes, okay. Double. When does that come out? Yeah. December. No, right, right. It's,
Yeah, well, we had put a general time frame in this that people would have from Jan 15th to February 28th to complete the survey, so I think we have, so there's an outlook in January, right? No,
no.
it's December, January, no. But and that's what has to be in by November 10th.
Yes, that's. the problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah,
That's only
I
the
mean,
one.
the postcard is easier
Yeah,
getting that out, but the outlook is,
Okay.
and I think that's critical too.
so you or I could follow up with Lynn.
And let me understand when Christie, with the Bayview is,
I'm texting them right now, answering them. Yes.
okay, so we've got more work to do. And I believe there's one other item has to do with the memorandum of understanding with the county regard to meeting the requirements of the California Integrated Waste Management Act of 1989. I will bring it over to you, David.
As we were looking at the various agreements that are tied into Bayview and solid waste, we noted that an agreement between the district and the county actually expired. So I contacted the county. They came back with a draft. I reviewed it, went back to them with a couple of questions and issues. And what you have before you is what we're asking the board to approve. It is a lengthy timeframe, but it's really ongoing, what this involves. And really what the county wants is the fact that there's communication between the district and the county in regard to what the state of California has passed. And I got the Christies involved in this because even though the agreement isn't specific, is specific to the district and the county, the Christies actually do a lot of this work that's in this agreement. And Greg can speak if you have any questions, more specific, probably better than I can, but they're okay with the agreement. And Ann was, our legal counsel, Ann Saprell, was okay with the agreement.
Sylvia?
If Anne has reviewed and approved this as to form, then, oh yeah, she will sign. It says by legal counsel on our side. Sorry, I missed that at the end. Thank you. Great.
Any other questions? I will note that this MOU has obligated the district to do a survey. And we've just talked about a survey, and so we have also agreed, and this MOU predates us. It goes back even like 2014, something like that. And so that there is a survey requirement in there, and we should be expected to do that as well. Yes, Cass?
I thought it obligated Bayview to
Bayview
do a
has
survey.
certain obligations. The district has an obligation with regard to surveying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm okay with that.
When he does.
Can you point us? I didn't catch that. And I'd like to just want to understand what kind of survey.
It's more of a satisfaction survey. If you look at 2.4.4, talks about the copy of draft customer survey for county review and approval, et cetera, and copy of the annual customer information. So,
But a survey about our recycling and waste services?
Yeah.
Okay.
right, exactly. And
Love
essentially, we're almost, we're sort of asking that question.
Right. Is that going to fulfill the requirement?
And I don't know, but we do have to submit
What?
that to the county.
What did you ask?
Whether the questions we're asking relative to, waste collection in our survey, this survey satisfies this MOU requirement for a survey?
Number one, as far as I know, this agreement's been in place for a number of years and the survey's never been done. That's not to say we shouldn't follow the agreement we make. But number two, I would say that down the road, we should have a very specific
Mhm.
solid waste. It goes back to what you said. This is a high level, take the temperature. Now, as we continue to move along, we're going to start having specific issues or questions that we can go back to our residents. And solid waste would be one that I would suggest there would be a standalone solid waste survey in the near future.
Well, with our annual subscription to Survey Monkey, we could easily do that.
Yeah, and I think it's probably more than just the simple question that we have on our survey.
We don't necessarily have to hire an expensive firm for that
No, no,
survey
no,
either.
no.
So we could-
I mean, frankly, given that it hasn't been done before, I don't even know what the county expects, other than they want to review it. So Cass, go ahead.
But, you know, residents aren't gonna want to be surveyed over and over. I would just put a question in our survey about their satisfaction with, we didn't.
If you
we don't
read,
have that.
the
No, we
problem
don't.
is if you read the agreement, we have to get county approval. And trust me, getting county approval, we'll be lucky to see next year getting it done.
And they may want more detail than just, are you satisfied with, with, wa- waste hauling, whatever we want to say. So, any other comments on that? Okay, so, we're comfortable with that and having it signed and sent to the county. And do we need a vote to pass it? Okay,
I move to approve the amended memorandum of understanding.
okay. Any second?
I second.
Before we vote, Delk has a question. Her hand is raised, so, and I would have expected.
I'm unmuting myself, okay?
Yep.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right. Regarding the first sentence of the document, I think second should be inserted before amended each time to prevent the confusion with the existing document, which is already named amended memorandum or amended MOU. There are at least 9 other places in the draft where this clarification should be made. Under recitals letter J, the 2014 Bayview franchise agreement has been amended 3 times. It would be clear if this document stated which amendment extended the agreement to 2026. These amendments are not posted on the Waste Management website, so it was tedious finding them. There is no letter L statement in the previous county district MOU, so the strike-throughs seem to be in error. I think this addition should state with no strike-throughs, the amended MOU expired on August 31st, 2024. The county and district now wish to enter into the second amended MOU to replace the amended MOU.
Delk? You muted yourself.
Unmute.
Um,
Okay, I got a message says the host unmuted me. So I will send you this, all right? Mr. President, I will send an email with my comments to you. And you want to know some personal things. I'm getting tired of this hassle we are having with these Zoom meetings where you get cut off and it says that you have unmuted yourself. You have muted yourself. I didn't do that. That's it.
Okay, so I'm sorry for the confusion, Delk.
That's not good enough.
All right, appreciate your comments and send me the comment.
But I have a question. If, we have to decide what we're voting on, and if we're going to, either we are gonna take Delk's comments or not. And so I don't feel comfortable voting on a document I know they're sort of minor changes,
No.
so can we?
I'm more than happy to table it and get an email from Delk on her comments and go back to the county. What's disappointing is I wish someone would have pointed that out to me and, you could say, well, why didn't I find it? Okay, I missed it, I guess. But anyway, to answer your question, Director, we should not vote on something that we're not comfortable with. And what she highlighted, I'm not comfortable with now.
Right, I mean, overall, this is fine, and these changes may be, may be considered minor enough to say there's a way to approve it, as long as it's approved, or like, the council has final approval as to form. I don't know if we can do that in this case.
Well, you have the other side of it though, and that's why I'm not comfortable is the county is, I mean,
Yeah,
a
okay,
section of the coordinating committee was totally wrong in what it stated, and it took
yeah.
a half-hour discussion for him to wordsmith it so that county council would approve it. So I'd feel more comfortable just starting over.
I move to table this until general manager, our council and county are able to give us a final copy.
Seconded, and thank you, Delk.
I don't even think we need a motion. I mean.
Yeah,
we're
it's
not-
just tabled.
We're not going to act on it. It's tabled. So,
You don't,
and Delk has,
you don't need a vote?
we're not going to begin with.
No, we vote to table, so I think we have to vote to table,
Okay, well.
I guess. I mean,
You've made a motion, you've seconded. Call the roll. Just. All right, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay, here's an answer in regard to the newsletter from Bayview. We do a year and we're going to do one on November 15th, a citywide to cover all information. We do 3 a year. We were and we will be doing an extra one in November before the holidays to cover all the information about recycling. So yeah, it's out of sync a little bit on the quarterly basis, but there will be 4 that will be generated.
All right. With that, I see nothing else on the agenda. So I will close the meeting and we will see everyone in November, which I believe is November 14th. Am I correct? I think so.
think so.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you all for attending. Appreciate it. Have a nice evening.
It is the 14th.